know there ain't no stopping us. Fly without a boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. Looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I'd be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get a glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't. Shining like it's neon. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Okay, oh good. The screen is in the right spot. I didn't know where my camera was pointed. So, hello everyone. This should be an interesting episode. I heard some of the reeing from a distance the minute I scheduled it because of the provocative title that I put on it. So let me give a little bit of an intro. These past few days have been quite enlightening. And the reactions from libertarians, I wish I could say it was enlightening. They've been mostly disappointing. And I tend to think a lot of it is somewhat of a defensive reaction. We like to pretend that our philosophy is perfect and doesn't have any flaws, but the fact is all philosophies have flaws. Doesn't mean fatal flaws. It doesn't mean can't be overcome, But it does mean we need to be honest about when issues come up. And also to stop pretending like we already live in a state of nature, a blank slate upon which our philosophy can be applied with purity. We don't. We don't live in a tabula rasa. We have to deal with the world as it is. So we are imposing, this pure vision of libertarianism upon a very impure canvas. And we wonder why the results sometimes can look quite dystopian. It's because we haven't made the appropriate adjustments. And you can pretend like that isn't an issue, but it is. And if I'm saying that, I'm coming to you, first of all, as a hardcore anarchist. Second of all, as one of the hardest of hard deontologists. Meaning, most of you know what that phrase means, but it's basically rule-based ethics. And anyone who's observed me over the past 2 years has noted that I'm pretty ruthlessly consistent and stubborn. And that is a characteristic of hard deontologists. You can nearly always predict what my reaction is going to be, and that I will probably stick by it, even if I stand alone. The classic formulation of deontology is do what is right, though the heavens may fall. And that is basically how I operate. Most people saw that most solidly in the disputes over whether or not we should have an in-person convention, and our bylaws do not allow it. And I was not going to wink and nod and cross my fingers behind my back and pretend like they did, because they don't. But, however, that doesn't mean that I didn't realize the reality of situations, and that, if everywhere shut down, and there was no place we could possibly have our convention, that at some point, principle needs to yield to reality. We did have a place, however, and it went forward. But I do believe that we always have to keep reality firmly in view. So let's have a somewhat provocative discussion. If anyone was overly triggered by the fact that I put in the title exposing a flaw of libertarianism and felt like I was betraying the cause, I humbly submit to you, if that was your first feelings, you are in a cult and not in a political party. We cannot treat our belief system, our philosophy, as if it is, immaculately conceived and delivered to us on high without spot or blemish. All human systems will have them. I believe ours has the least, and it doesn't suffer from the fatal flaw of initiating aggression. So let's get started. Obviously, I am dealing with the big tech takeover of the public square and the very unique challenges that it has presented to us, and the very weak way the majority of libertarians have responded, in my view. Mostly because when I had started talking about it, I didn't mention anything about laws, not one damn time. All I did was criticize the actions. And all I heard was, but it's a private company. No shit, Sherlock. I never said it wasn't. Since when does being a private company mean that you can't be criticized? I mean, it was absolutely insane. To get a tissue here. Absolutely insane, the reactions. As if owning private property, and I actually dispute that when it comes to these tech companies, but I granted the premise for the sake of argument, renders you immune from criticism. When did that happen? I don't recall ever seeing that as a part of libertarian philosophy. The fact is, I zealously defended the right of the bakers to not bake the cake, and in the same breath said I thought it was a dick move. They had the right to do it, and it was a dick move. Since when is that controversial? Since when does private property mean you can't criticize, or you can't say other people should have a problem with it. You can have a problem with the way people use their rights. You can have a problem with the miser who has every right to all of their money. But you can criticize them for being miserly and not wishing to help other people. Libertarians seem to have forgotten that these past few weeks, and no wonder the world hates us. When you can't see wrong and speak out against it because private property, no, that does not shield you from criticism. A lot of shitty people do shitty things with their private property. It's not a fucking idol, people. Let's get to talking now, shall we?
If you don't understand how insanely, massively significant the current power grab by tech giants is, it's probably because they've spent years conditioning you to focus on other things. Don't pay attention to the fact that we're seizing more power over what people are allowed to say than anyone else in history has ever had. Instead, focus on something else that we want you to focus on to keep you distracted. Oh, look, some racists. There are some racists over there. Those racists will destroy the world if you don't spend every waking moment obsessing over them. So just ignore what we're doing and focus on the real problem, the racists.
Okay, and again, this is a get ready with me, so you will be getting ready with me. I should have introduced that clip first. And to give all the necessary disclaimers, which is pathetic that I need to do. The speaker is David Wood. David Wood is a fiery Christian apologist. I listen to a lot of different people, and if I find a good clip, I will play it as long as I agree or am planning on refuting what the clip says. A lot of people have a problem with David Wood because his specialty is debating Muslims. Religious people debate. Get over it, people. That does not make him an Islamophobe any more than it makes the Muslims that debate against him Christianophobes, or whatever the word may be. For those of you who are Christian in the audience, I really encourage you to go listen to David Wood's testimony. Oh my goodness, I have never heard anything like it. He is a diagnosed psychopath or sociopath who has turned his life around and learned to empathize with people and live a functioning, fully human life through his religion, through the gospel. I've never heard anything like it, and I've never heard anyone unabashedly admit that that was their diagnosis. It's quite a fantastic testimony. Those of you who aren't religious, you might just find it interesting. And hello, David Davis. I love seeing the regulars here. And as always, this should be an interactive conversation. So let's continue with some more of David Wood.
Of course, if you want total control over what people can say, you have to crush the competition. This is a graph of Parler's internet traffic ranking over the past 90 days. Notice three things. One, there's consistent growth. If you're Twitter, you don't like that. Second, there's a surge in new users here. Parler is not a conservative platform, but this is when a ton of conservatives announced that they were moving to Parler because they were fed up with Twitter's policies. Third, an even bigger surge of conservatives was just beginning when Google, Apple, and Amazon all agreed to pull the plug.
Okay, first of all, David got something wrong there. Parler describes themselves as a conservative platform, so I don't know why he would deny that. Maybe he just didn't know, but later I found out they described themselves as that in his own video, so I guess I can't say he didn't know. Maybe it just slipped past him. Not that I care. They're, the demonization of Parler by even amongst libertarians I find quite humorous. I've been a member over there for a while. It's not the alt-right Wild West. I'm sure there's a ton of alt-right people there, But like most platforms, you see what you want to see. There's plenty of libertarians there, and there's plenty of just mainline Ben Shapiro type conservatives. But now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've seen one liberal there, but they'd be welcome, and they could take it over if they wanted to. By numbers, the same way Dave Smith says he's taking over the Libertarian Party. Nothing devious about that. So, but it's funny how threatened some people, including libertarians, are by the fact that there might be a platform that caters to conservatives. Yet we have no problem with Twitter being like so far left and catering to that. It's just a weird double standard to me. It used to be in about 2008 that the Libertarian Party kissed way too much Republican ass. But we've gone the complete opposite direction, where we think hating the right or hating Republicans or hating conservatism is the same as loving liberty, and it ain't. I wish we would stop doing this weird pendulum swing and just be libertarians and pretty much hate both of them, maybe? Could we try that? So, he showed that interesting business graph. Not a surprise. Good. That's what the market should do, correct? You don't like Twitter, as everyone's been saying, but it's a private company. Go somewhere else. Okay. People started going somewhere else. Good, right? Perfect. Libertarianism is working, right?
Let's read a little of Parler LLC versus Amazon Web Services, Inc. 1. This is a civil action for injunctive relief, including a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunctive relief and damages. Last month, defendant Amazon Web Services, Inc. and the popular social media platform Twitter signed a multi-year deal so that Amazon Web Services could support the daily delivery of millions of tweets. Amazon Web Services currently provides that same service to Parler, a conservative microblogging alternative and competitor to Twitter.
Okay, that's where those Parler's attorneys wrote that. And they called themselves a conservative microblogging platform. So I don't know why people, why David Wood was so eager to say they're not a conservative platform when they identified that way. Maybe I'm reading too much into that identification, but it's just something to note. The reason I picked David's video, A, I thought he was pretty well spoken on it, and B, he's the only one I found that actually went through the complaint. And being of a legal background, I'm always very, very interested in that. And I learned things I did not know. I didn't know Amazon Web Services was in partnership with Twitter. That's very interesting, isn't it? Things start to look a little more, sus, don't they? And I'm going to do another whole show on this, because something else that I think libertarians are really missing the boat on, and I felt this way for a while, is when people start talking about free speech, and then, the knees started jerking, and you're informed of something you already know, but for some reason people think they need to say it over and over, that the freedom of speech, the constitutional protections of freedom of speech only applies against the government. Yeah, does that mean it's the only place they're valuable? Do we think we get our rights from the Bill of Rights? No. It just happens to be the one enshrined there. But that doesn't mean freedom of speech is not something we should value and strive for nearly everywhere, even on private property, that it's inherently good, that bad speech has an inherent good, even bad speech does. Without that principle, that's where libertarianism leads to fucking hell.
2. When Twitter announced 2 evenings ago that it was permanently banning President Trump from its platform, conservative users began to flee Twitter en masse for Parler. The exodus was so large that the next day, yesterday, Parler became the #1 free app downloaded from Apple's App Store.
Okay. And a little bit about the look I'm trying to do today. I'll probably fuck it up. I want to do like an icy winter look. And the inspiration for it was these lashes that I got. And they're actually even called the icy lash. It's these white ones, so we'll see. That's kind of what I'm going for. Okay, but on here, you personally, like, is my online life somehow less fulfilling because President Trump was banned? No, I never read any of his shit to begin with. But those of you who have been following me for a while will know that as I said, I am ruthlessly consistent. I was one of the few, and I think the only one in Libertarian Party national leadership that roundly condemned the deplatforming, the coordinated deplatforming of Alex Jones. And you think I carry a torch for Alex Jones? Nope. But he has given a gift to the world in the gay frogs thing. I mean, that was a gift to the world. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But I wasn't an Alex Jones fan. But I went off, Queen, about his deplatforming and got a lot of flack for it. Because I guess freedom of speech is only worth defending if it's speech you like. Me thinks you don't understand the value of freedom of speech, and I knew that was the beginning of things to come. And it wasn't necessarily even the deplatforming, it was the coordination of it all at once. These big tech companies now are the public square. I do not find persuasive. In fact, I find it extremely tone deaf. The libertarians who are saying, well, there are other ones, they just might be smaller. You know what that reminds me of? When I took the state of Colorado to court for the right to take my ballot selfie and said it was infringing upon my political speech. You want to know what their argument was? You could exercise your political speech in a different way. Well, fuck you. I want to exercise my political speech in this way. Yes, that involved the government. I'm giving an analogy. Don't re me. Don't re me, bro. So, this has been a crusade I've been on for a while, that this coordinated deplatforming is a big problem, and it is a threat to liberty. Continue.
We already saw from the traffic ranking that Parler was blowing up. Not surprisingly, the app was blowing up as well. 3. Yet last evening, Amazon Web Services announced that it would suspend Parler's account effective Sunday, January 10th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it stated the reason for the suspension was that Amazon Web Services was not confident Parler could properly police its platform regarding content that encourages or incites violence against others. However, Friday night, one of the top trending tweets on Twitter was "Hang Mike Pence."
Yeah, all you guys who are fapping over the terms of service and kept reminding me of the terms of service. What do you think of "Hang Mike Pence"? That was precious, wasn't it? Don't give me the terms of service bullshit. We all know that that's just a facade because it's so unequally applied. When you sign up and you devote your time to adding value to that platform because they make money off of you, it's not a gift even though you're not directly paying for it. And there is a terms of service. That's a contract between you and the provider. And there is an expectation that it will be applied evenly, that you will agree to these rules because you have the expectation that they will be applied equally. And when you look around the platform and see how they're applied, that aids you in interpreting how allegedly the provider is interpreting them. But when they let "Hang Mike Pence" up, which is directly a violent statement, because, it comes from the proper point of view, the acceptable point of view, but you can't even say, let's go to the Capitol and peacefully let our voice be heard, which is, in fact, what Trump did say. If you go to another video where I ask if Trump incited, you will see my opinion on it, and that's not my final word on it because I have some additional thoughts prompted by Dave Smith that I feel that he did. Now, that doesn't mean It was wrong, though, necessarily. I get into that more in that video. And Dave Smith, again, helped sharpen my thoughts on that. I definitely think there is responsibility on Trump's part. But if we're just dealing with just the mere words, Trump said peacefully, and these leftists are saying hang. Where's the standards here? So don't give me terms of service. You can sit on a cactus with those fucking terms of service. Okay, let me curl my eyelashes here. They never grew back from the time I accidentally pulled them all out with that moiety product that, oh my God, that was a torture. That should be part of the Spanish Inquisition. Hopefully they will grow back. Some people might say to me, why don't you use that eyelash serum, which really does work. I don't know if the formula changed, but it was Latisse the last time I looked at it. And at that time, and again, I don't think it will change. And my hands get shaky, if you notice. There's certain medication that I take. It's actually for antidepressants. Zoloft makes me shake sometimes like a Parkinson's patient. But continuing. The Latisse, if it's still the same formula, if you have light eyes, green or blue, like I have green, there is a side effect in a small percentage, but it is there, that it can turn your eyes brown. I like my green eyes, and it's permanent. So I'm not willing to take that chance for longer lashes. I'll just take vitamins and do whatever I can, or wear falsies, you know? Okay, going to the next clip.
4. Amazon Web Services' decision to effectively terminate Parler's account is apparently motivated by political animus. It is also apparently designed to reduce competition in the microblogging services market to the benefit of Twitter. 5. Thus, Amazon Web Services is violating Section 1 of the Sherman Antitrust Act in combination with defendant Twitter. Amazon Web Services is also breaching its contract with Parler, which requires Amazon Web Services to provide Parler with a 30-day notice before terminating service, rather than the less than 30-hour notice Amazon Web Services actually provided.
Okay, before we get to talking about what David said, those of you who are into beauty might have seen, yeah, I'm a sucker for the stuff that's in ads, both Insta and Facebook. You might have seen this eyebrow contraption tool, like where, you know, it'll help you shape your eyebrows. I just got this in the mail. Yes, I did buy it. Whatever. Laugh at me, that's fine. But the instructions are all in Chinese, so I've got to try to figure this out. So there's interesting. Those of you who fap to terms of service, I sure hope that you're very disturbed by the breach of contract by Amazon there, that they were supposed to give 30 days notice, and they gave 30 hours. I think Amazon's going to be in trouble here, and good. I hope they get smacked hard. So that was an interesting fact I didn't know, and the fact that they're protecting a different business. There is definite collusion going on here. Now, we can have all kinds of negative feelings about the Sherman Antitrust Act, but it seems to me pretty apparent that it's been violated, at least from the facts I know so far. Whether it should exist or not's another story. The fact is that it does. David Wood is not a libertarian, so he's not going to give any commentary on that, though I have some Smiths clips from Dave Smith coming up where he does comment on it a little bit. So I think that Amazon may be in trouble. So I'm going to look at some comments here, because you know I like this to be interactive. It's Austin Walter. Hi, Austin Walter. I got permabanned from Facebook. Funny how that happens, right? It's been happening an awful lot. It is definitely a blind spot. I always sensed it was a blind spot, but I didn't see it so starkly until these last few days. There is a problem here, and we can refuse to admit it, but other people will see that we refuse to admit it. I prefer to buck up and face things head on. Let's see if I can get the rest of the comments here. 1 second. Put up the comment window. I don't got much room on this desk, so that's why it always looks like I'm a little, cramped. Let's put up the other comment from Free Men Die Free. It's important to note that private companies who collude, conspire, and assist a tyrannical state should not be viewed as private entities, but rather as accomplices to tyrants. Yes, that is a big missing puzzle here. Facebook and Twitter and Google through YouTube. Google owned, YouTube owned by Google, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They have leveraged the power of government. The minute you get into bed with the ultimate aggressor and use the power of the government, there's a biblical saying, he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. And this libertarian will cry no fucking tears if they get the Sherman Antitrust Act levied against them, because they knowingly got into bed with the tyrannical state and became an arm of the tyrannical state. Unlike Mr. Baker here in Colorado, who was just trying to run a bakery business. If you get into bed with the aggressor, you're no longer simply a private company. And also, I've said this, and I'm going to be fleshing this out more. I think that's the subject for a podcast I'm going to be on Friday, and a few others that I got invited to that I need to answer. I have become more and more convinced of the fact that corporations are not libertarian and they're not private. They get special state-granted privileges and are creatures of the state. And creatures of the state can live by the state and die by the state. So I've granted the but it's private property position for the sake of argument, but I actually personally don't grant that to corporations. They are not people. But I didn't want to confuse or combine the two issues. So let's see this contraption. No, I don't want straight across. My eyebrows aren't straight across. So let's play another clip while I'm looking at this thing to see how I can not look like, who's that guy who lives in the trash can on Sesame Street? I don't remember his name, but that's what made me look like I'd look like him. Not an attractive look.
Finally, Amazon Web Services is committing intentional interference with prospective economic advantage given the millions of users expected to sign up in the near future. 6. This emergency suit seeks a temporary restraining order against defendant Amazon Web Services to prevent it from shutting down Parler's account at the end of today. Doing so is the equivalent of pulling the plug on a hospital patient on life support. It will kill Parler's business at the very time it is set to skyrocket.
Okay, I think I figured out there's like this little hinge on here. But this is so plasticky. But again, it wasn't that expensive, so what do you expect, right? Let me see if this more accurately mimics human. Yeah, look at that. We will try this out and see how it works. I'm a sucker for beauty products. Now, I know there's another wrinkle in this, and I wish it didn't exist because it does complicate issues where Parler kind of screwed their own pooch too by having, from what I understand, a very predictable security hack that caused their user data to be compromised. So it will be very hard to parse out if they recover. And from what I understand, they are in negotiations with another server company. If they are able to get back online and they don't recover, how much of that is attributable to Amazon and how much of it is attributable to their own security issue? Hard to tell. And I'm not so sure it will be able to be parsed out. And I don't know legally what type of damages there are for violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act. I don't know if it's punitive. In other words, it's not necessarily compensatory where you have to prove your actual damages. I believe it's actually what's considered is supposed to be a deterrent. It's the type of statute that's a deterrent, so the damages are punitive and not directly related to your actual damages, in which case that would inure to Parler's favor. But I don't work in that area of law. I'm kind of reaching back 20 years to when I got my paralegal degree. All right, so let's continue, and I'm gonna... Oh, I'm drinking that soda way too fast. I'm trying to find my brow. Okay, so this is the greatest brow product, by the way. It's Benefit Gimme Brow. But let's go on.
One of the things that I always admired about principled men is that in times of chaos, in times of hysteria, they're able to stay true to their principles. I was talking about recently, I can't remember, I can't remember if it was on our show or on Malice's show, but in one of the crossover shows, Harry Brown, who's great libertarian, who's gone now, but he wrote on September 12th, 2001, this piece on 9/11, and it was, I mean, I said this on Malice's show. I think, besides the Declaration of Independence, maybe the greatest piece of American writing I've ever seen in my life, because it was on September 12th. If you can try to imagine. And he basically wrote this piece that was like, what did you think was going to happen? What did you think? We can just bomb Muslim countries with carte blanche and just never face any consequences? Did you expect we wouldn't work up any hatred toward us? Did you think we can just dominate an entire region and that they're not going to try to get us back? And it just the amount of courage that took. The day after 9/11, when the only thing you're allowed to say is, you know, like how great America is and how terrible the Muslims are and all that, like, there's just so great. And I just look around and I go, man, I wish there were more people, and particularly more libertarians, who had that type of courage, you know, to like stand up to something and go, okay, whoa, you know, hold your horses. Let's not get hysterical. Let's actually analyze this. And it's amazing that how much they get angry at anyone who even attempts to do that. Even just a little bit, like, okay, hold on, let's actually think about what's going on here and be fair about this. Even just asking questions about it, people get like furious. Well, what do you mean? How could you possibly ask that? I tweeted something the other day that was basically saying, why do we know it's a given that if Trump is out, things will get better? Maybe Trump being in was calming a lot of his people. Maybe him being in there made them feel like, well, at least we got our guy in there fighting for us. And now that he's gone, it'll actually be more chaotic. Maybe that's something we should think about. And that's all I said was maybe that's something we should think about. And people were fucking getting furious at me for it. Oh, yeah, fucking what a dumb take that is. And you're like, it's not even really a take. It's really just raising a question that I think is an important question that is not so straightforward to answer.
Okay, now I'm doing my highlighting, my contouring. So now you get to see me with a little bit of a clown face on for a bit. Multiple great issues there. The last one is one I want to bring out, which isn't even a point he was making, but it's a point I want to make. Libertarians lately, man. Maybe it's not lately. Maybe I'm just noticing it. They're really in their own little circle of acceptable opinions. I mean, you step out of line the slightest bit, and it's like, oh, that's a shitty take. You know, what happened to letting people have a little bit of a variety of opinions? I mean, the mass unfriending that has happened, if you just happen to have a different opinion on something, is just nuts. I had people unfriending me just for simply criticizing the fact that Trump got massively deplatformed. That was it. That was enough for some people. Libertarian safe space, anyone? You can't tolerate hearing somebody that might disagree? You think, are you scared you might change your mind? I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane to me. So I imagine the dogpiling that he got for saying something that maybe some people didn't like. And now I, forgot the first part of what, men of principle. I could be flattering myself. I like to think of myself as a person, which, principle, I'm sure he didn't mean just men. He used that for mankind. Yeah, I like to think I have the courage of my convictions, and I think I have the track record to prove it of taking unpopular stands and not wavering. Even people who don't particularly care for me generally will concede that I operate on what I believe is my principles, and I'm not a liar. If that's, that's a nice legacy to have. I wouldn't mind having that on my tombstone. She lived by her principles and wasn't a liar. So I get it where he's saying about the courage, and courage is not being fearless. Anyone can be fearless. Well, not any. Psychopaths are fearless. They're not courageous. Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. And it's not always doing the right thing. Like, I got a lot of shit before talking about people who just get really upset when you say something they don't like. There are evil people who are courageous. The word brave or courageous doesn't have a value statement to it. You can be courageous for good. You can be courageous for evil. It just means that you faced fear. And the last time, there's 2 times I got into trouble for that. Once, I did the same thing that Bill Maher did, where he had said the people who flew the planes into the buildings exhibited a certain kind of bravery. It doesn't mean they were right. It doesn't mean it was noble. It just means that I know my ass couldn't look at a skyscraper coming up and still continue the course. And I also said that it takes a certain kind of bravery to go on college campuses and confront people that you know will be hostile to you. And that was in reference to Caitlin Bennett. It doesn't mean that I think she's right. It doesn't mean that I don't think she baits those kids. It just means that a lot of people wouldn't have the courage to do that, to just walk up to strangers. I don't know that I would. And I consider myself a pretty brave person. But people got it's like, that's what, you wonder why I don't give a fuck about what people think. That's why. Because I'm just over it. You start molding yourself into something that you're not. Now, I will disagree with Dave Smith. No, the best piece of American writing is the Statement of Principles. Get it right, Dave. That's a shitty take. So, let's continue.
Anyway, there's a lot of fucking interesting shit going on. The hysteria, the hypocrisy, it's all over the place. I don't even know what to start with, Rob. Where do you think we go first?
I think the Parler thing is fascinating.
Yeah.
And if you look back, I think it was even our last episode, I was saying, hey, we got a free market and you've got competitors like Parler. And the more they push Trump, the more they're making a conservative market. And if there was one thing I really didn't even see coming, I thought they would remove certain individuals from platforms under the basis of, hey, they're going to get together, they're going to cause violence. I did not see them taking down entire platforms. This is a game changer. And to give the full picture of just how much of a game changer this is. So a year ago, it was conceivable a program like this could get pulled down from YouTube. And YouTube, it's a platform where there we can make money. We're not able to monetize. That sucks, right? We could get pulled down at any moment. That sucks too. Now you got to start wondering, hey, are they going to take down Gas Digital? Like the same as you could just be taken down because you're on their platform. Now, apparently, I don't know the infrastructure of the web, but apparently the entire web is basically a publishing platform where you're at their mercy.
Yeah.
It's not just your YouTube channel. It's even if you've got your own website, your own everything, it's up to them whether or not they want to let you be on the internet. That's crazy talk.
Yep. He's got a great point there. And hey, Julian, I just saw that you popped in. Love saying hi to my regulars. Good to see you. Yeah, that should scare all of us. That there is this much control. And, another thing I did want to add when we were talking about the people of principle. This is why I get so irritated with the National Party. We haven't come out with any statement about the deplatforming of Trump, because we just will not touch the third rails anymore. This is us. I wish I don't have a little stuffed animal here. So I'll just use, this is us. Good, harmless, toothless third party. Good. Just fool yourself into thinking you're doing something. Don't ever, ever say something that might touch the third rails of politics. Not me. I'll touch the third rail. Third parties who won't are useless. Finishing up my contouring here. So we didn't stick up for Alex Jones, and we're not going to stick up for Trump. And remember that saying, right? From World War II. You know, they came for the X, and I didn't say anything. Because I wasn't an X, or X wasn't popular, or that people, my neighbors, might look askance at me. And so when they come for us, there will be nobody left to say anything. And if we're not concerned by this whole incitement language thing, and I am going to do part 2 of my Trump video on incitement, do you not know? I'm using Jesus' words to the Pharisees, because I know you do know. Do you not know? Have you not read that domestic terrorist groups, the characteristics of them, were listed as anti-government and libertarian? Not big L, was small l, because they wanted to get the Republicans in on that too, the ones that consider themselves libertarian, and are just confused. My husband's home, so when he comes up here, I'll need to let him know I'm recording, but you don't think we're on the chopping block? You think if you keep your mouth shut and you just toe the line that we're going to be spared? You do not understand the government then. You are delusional. So I'll speak up now. And I hope there's somebody left to speak up for me when they come for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is, I gotta say, and I want to almost choose my words carefully here when I say this. This is the strongest case for antitrust action, I believe, in American history. If you actually look back, and by the way, the Mises Institute has done like phenomenal work on this, particularly Tom DiLorenzo, who's gone through the history of antitrust legislation, and it's almost all bullshit.
Okay, the point he was raising there, and I clipped it out because I'm not trying to play his whole show, is that there's a lot of examples of alleged collusion and stuff in the past. He brought up big oil, and he went. There's a lot of information on the history of it, that it ended up getting broken up by the market and not by the government, though the government has taken credit for it. So that most of these cases in the past have been complete and utter bullshit. Trying to get my other little. This is also something that was off a Facebook ad. Those of you might recognize it. The crease piece. It's kind of nifty for doing a cut crease, though my eyes are so hooded, it doesn't matter what I use. It's just difficult. So I like that Dave was very willing to admit that this is a challenge. And I was already starting to say, it's funny, I think a lot like Dave, because I find that I'm saying things and then I go and listen to his show and he has said the same things. Now, at the very end of all of these clips, I am going to lay out the problem, and then I'm going to lay out maybe why it's not a fatal problem and what the solutions are, or the universe of solutions, and why we don't have to give up our philosophy or anything like that, but we do have to face the problem head on. So let's continue on the clips.
It's always basically been bullshit. This situation's a little bit different. This situation, it's hard to ignore. And I gotta say, if like one of the things that drove me crazy about the Joe Jorgensen campaign, I mean, there's several. But one of the things that really drove me crazy, and me and you talked about this throughout her campaign, was that she would give a speech that was basically just libertarian talking points. And not necessarily that me and you would disagree with them, you know, but she would give a speech that you could have given in 1996. Literally, with every single line of it could have been said in 1996. No change is necessary. And that just, like, on a human level, when you're living through the year that was 2020, you're like, how are you not like making this specific about what people are going through right now? This seems like just like an exercise in abstractions rather than actually talking to, hey, all this real world shit, which obviously, if you're a libertarian, that's the whole point of our game. It's not just that we have this kind of great philosophy. It's that we have this great philosophy that actually solves real problems for real people. That's the point of it. If we didn't have that second part, then this is all just stupid and a waste of time. And I just feel like with everything, basically, and I've had this attitude since, 2016, especially since Trump won, but then particularly in 2020 and now into 2021, that you're like, you got to be paying attention to what's actually going on right now, not just like married to your dogma. That's easy to just be married to your talking points. And then you're Joe Jorgensen, who just gets up there and goes, government is too big, too intrusive, and too involved in your personal life. You're like, okay, yes, it is. But like, can there be a little something about, the craziest year that anyone's ever lived through? Maybe we could address that.
Okay, I got a little defensive at first listening to him because I really loved Joe Jorgensen's campaign, but I put aside that defensiveness. See how it does a pretty nice cut crease. I do have to blend it out, so I stepped back and said, well, probably maybe he's got a point. Let me listen. And yeah, I think he did. I am a married to my philosophy type person. But exactly what I'm complaining about with the issues in the libertarian responses is that we've been too just married to our philosophy and aren't applying it to the real situation we find ourselves in, and we need to. Now, I don't really count that as too much of a flaw with Joe, though I do wish it was applied more to the pandemic. But she's talking to people who never even heard our philosophy before. So that already was some strong medicine, so I don't necessarily agree with him there. But I did take it to heart for us when we're talking amongst ourselves. Is there any reason for us talking to each other to just be parroting back and forth, but it's a private company? Yeah, and in other news, water is wet, the Pope is Catholic, and politicians are corrupt? What good does that talking point do? Can't we move past the basics? It's a little crazy. Okay, I want to put this in here in the crease. And it's funny, on my threads, everyone was so willing to argue. I'm inviting you to come into comments if you want. You don't have to argue, but if you want to argue, you can. My comments are pretty open to anybody, and these streams are public. Okay, so we're going to blend this out a little bit too. All right, let's go to the next one.
And I gotta say, looking at this situation, and particularly the steps that were just taken with Parler, you're like, holy shit. This is something that by every inch of my philosophy and my dogma, which I'm certainly guilty of, clinging to at times, this should not be the case. But this isn't like all of those other examples that I'm using. It's just not like them. This is something different. This is the strongest argument for monopolistic practices, I believe, in the history of the country.
And I think he's right. If we don't admit that, I think we are being extraordinarily delusional. This is the strongest case I think there can be, at least that we've seen so far for these laws. Again, I'm going to deal with that at the very end, so don't freak the hell out and automatically assume I'm advocating for laws. Just wanted to show that other libertarians are seeing the problem, the same problem that I saw.
Where you have not only do you have these like 3 or 4 big firms that are colluding to silence voices that they don't like, but now when somebody else comes along and goes, well, we don't want to silence those voices, they are all going to collude to shut down that company's ability to compete. Now, I'm not suggesting that government, that some type of government intervention here is going to be the solution. I'm very skeptical of that. I'm just acknowledging that this is something different, and this is, and for people to just like, dismiss these concerns, I think is like incredibly short-sighted.
Yep, and that's exactly what I had been saying. Dave is my spirit animal, I think. I find that he and I have been saying the same thing without being aware of it. It is incredibly short-sighted. And I'm trying to get this glitter to stick, so I put a little bit of alcohol, and I'm going to stick some alcohol on my little makeup pad here and see if that helps the glitter to stick rather than just go all over the place. So, we were all sitting here on Facebook going, they can just go someplace else. But what do you do then when the platform you're fleeing goes and destroys, or tries to? They've succeeded so far in destroying Parler. We'll see if they come back. The platform that you would flee to. What then? That's a bit different than it just not existing yet. Sometimes people will go, but there's nowhere to go. Okay, well, then build something to go. I do think that's a perfectly legitimate libertarian answer. But in this one, we tell them to go elsewhere, and their oppressors, their censors, go and destroy those companies. How do we deal with that as libertarians? Is that just perfectly fine? Is all we can do is criticize? These are the questions we need to grapple with. I don't have an answer yet. I'm going to talk about various answers at the end. But I'm asking you, are you fine with that? Because it seemed like I caught a lot of shit for saying I wasn't fine with the deplatforming. At what point do you grow a set and say you're not fine with that? Even though it is private property or whatever.
So just on that note of, hey, are we looking for government intervention here? I don't know if this is true, but I read, I think it might have been Parler or what's the other one, Gab? So I'm not sure which one this is true for, but not only were they all dropped at exactly the same time, which means that, like you said, the three of them are colluding, their lawyers dropped them as well. That's crazy. So in other words, your legal team that you would have in place to go fight this for you says, we're not representing you anymore, which sounds to me like that's more than just the threat of these tech companies, that this is a government move. I mean, I don't know quite the relationship between the tech companies and government, but if you don't think that this isn't coming from the Democratic Party cracking down, and this claim, and this is an important point, the claim that they made was that there were violent things said on Parler that Parler didn't remove. Go look at Twitter today. How many violent claims are on Twitter? How many death threats exist on Twitter? Twitter's not being pulled down because of random users making claims. It's not happening.
Yep, that's the point that David Wood had made. There is all kinds of violent shit on Twitter every single day. Very, very uneven application here. And you can't, I need to clean that up. Whenever you're working with black, the fallout can be quite intense. So need to clean that up. But that's also, if you're not frightened by the fact that on the same day their unrelated lawyers also drop them, what the hell's going on here? Are you okay with that? So not only do they have no place to go right now, but if wrongdoing is being done, even the very people who are supposed to represent them in the place that they're supposed to get justice, drop them. Why? What happened here? Were they threatened? That's what it seems like to me. Now, I know the king of the cocks there, which is Dave's co-host, thinks this was a government action. I'm not so sure about that. Government isn't quite that efficient. Usually requires a private company to be that efficient. I think in some way they got threatened by these power companies. Why do we as libertarians think a corporate boot will taste any sweeter to lick than a government boot? At least governments usually aren't very efficient or effective. Like, they bungle things. Businesses, they know how to do things efficiently. In a lot of ways, though not all of them, because you have the issue of the government claiming the ultimate legitimate use of force. But in some ways, I fear corporate overlords more than government ones. Because government's not competent. Never has, never will be. But corporations, they are ruthlessly competent. That's how they got where they're at. They know how to destroy competition because they have to deal with it. Government doesn't have to deal with competition. So they kind of suck at their processes. Merger of corporation and state is one of the most frightening things I can think of.
Slippery area there where it's hard to exactly say what's what. But if you're going to say that, hey, he said something that ended up leading to violence, and so that's that, it's like, okay, but then what else do we consider incitements to violence? I mean, how about framing the president for treason for 3 years? Is that not, I mean, if the president was guilty of colluding with a hostile foreign power, that might make it justified to use some violence too. And actually, there was quite a bit of violence in that name. How about someone like AOC or something like that saying that cops are out here, gunning down black people for sport? I mean, that certainly led to a lot of the Black Lives Matter Antifa violence over the summer, but I didn't see anybody connecting those dots, and none of us were even really calling for them to connect those dots. Like, okay, yes, you're saying something that I disagree with, and yeah, there are some other people being violent, but it's not as if you're directly calling them to be violent, and that is a very slippery slope to start going down. And so, of course, you see that it's so... this principle is not being applied consistently across the political spectrum.
Okay, let me get this eyeliner on here. I'm trying to bring in the white now for the icy look. But there's going to be some black that's going over this because I need that for the lash. So let me just keep that eye closed so it'll dry. Sorry about that. And I think that was the last clip. Let me check. Oh no, it looks like I have a few more. Okay, yeah, there's a very interesting point there. Though I'm not sure I entirely agree as a defeater against saying whether or not Trump incited anything. But if we're going to start going down that road, you don't think the Democrats have incited a bunch of stuff? When is their treason trial? When is their trial for all the property damage that was done? And again, this is going to be the subject of another show, because I want to explore this incitement thing a little bit more. Okay, so I got the white on there. Let's let that dry. And do I have this? Okay, yeah, for the bottom. All right, let's see the next clip.
It's there's a very different spectrum or a very different standard, I should say, for different sides here. So that's where this starts to get creepy. But yeah, I don't know. Look, from the libertarian position, I just think you can't ignore what's really going on here, which is that yeah, these big tech companies have an enormous amount of power. I mean, really power that is very different from anything else, I think, in history that you could compare from some even big, very powerful companies. This is a whole different level. This is a whole different thing here.
Absolutely. And we need to come to terms with that. So again, yeah, putting on some more. Oh, I got a little bit up there. I'll have to fix that. Let me blend that out. Okay. Gotta let that dry before I do more stuff. That's part of my problem. But you'll laugh at this trick. Here's like a personal fan for like when you're hot outside. I use it to dry my eyeliner. So I really am so surprised that nobody wants to comment and challenge on any of this. I invite you to do so. And if you are commenting and I'm not mentioning it, it's because I'm not seeing it. And as far as I know, my comment program is bringing in all the comments. But for some reason, if you are commenting and I'm not seeing it, head over to the YouTube link for this, because I can see by the icons that I am definitely seeing YouTube comments. And it helps me out a lot more if you watch this on YouTube, because I'm trying to get my 4,000 view hours in. Okay, that should have dried them. Next clip.
And I mean, I suppose you could argue that like the big oil companies, you know, in after the Industrial Revolution, it's like, well, the whole society is run on oil, but it was never really a threat that like individuals who had the wrong political beliefs weren't going to get oil. You know what I mean? Like that was never like a real threat.
Okay, I think Dave, though, is missing an important point here. I don't know whether this was a real threat or not, what I'm going to mention during the time of oil. While there might not have been threats of denial of goods or services based upon politics, I bet you there was some based on race. I bet you there was threats or perceived potential threats that perhaps black communities wouldn't. So I think he's missing a point there. But in any event, the articles he referred to, I would refer you to your show, had show how competition destroyed that possibility anyway. But I just think he's looking at that a little bit too narrowly. But yes, today, there's an important point to be made here where we realize that the whole reason for the First Amendment is so that political speech would be free from the government, which means that there's a special, I mean, it's all speech, but it's primarily political speech. Political speech is even looked at with more strict scrutiny for any violations of it by the court. So there's a reason why political speech is even elevated above other speech, which means that it should be just as valuable everywhere. So the fact that this is political speech that is being silenced in an alleged democracy, where the way you persuade people and the whole bedrock of these elections and things like that is the free exchange of political information. I am sorry, the silencing of political speech is evil. Simply evil. And these companies are doing evil.
This is different. And the truth is that you're looking at companies right now, the big tech, they are absolutely in bed with big government. It's not as if they're separate. They love big government and they're working with, as you pointed out, with big government to achieve the same ends. And these are people now who can silence the president. They can silence huge newspapers. They can, I mean, this is like a very creepy level, and then they can take out their competition. This has to be grappled with.
Okay, let me give me 1 second to get this magnetic liner on there. And I know that's covering up the white a little bit, but I'm experimenting. And I really got to let that dry before opening my eyes too much, so I'll be looking a little squinty. Yep, it has to be dealt with. So not only, as I said, do you have them censoring people, but then they are closing off their avenues of escape to have their speech heard elsewhere. And who's the ultimate victim here? It isn't Parler. It's the public. It's you guys. You don't get to hear things. Your overlords are telling you what you get to hear. And are you okay with that? I'm not. See, I already smudged some of this. So, trying to I'm so, oh God. Okay. Let's try to fix that. And might be one more clip left. Okay. Where did I put that eyeliner at now? I put it down, and now I don't know where I put it. Oh, there it is. Never mind. Next clip.
On the silencing side, imagine going back to the founding of this country and the writing the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution or any of that other stuff. When they invented freedom of speech, the fact that that can lead to an insurrection is kind of the point. Like if someone were to stand there and go, hey, if there's freedom of speech, people might be able to, that's the whole point, is that if you're tyrannical, people will have the ability to call you out, assemble, and overthrow it. That's why it's there. That is the point of it.
Let me get this liner on here. That connected a dot for me. That should have been obvious, but it wasn't. So you have political speech being silenced on the basis that it might cause an insurrection. But that's the whole point, isn't it, of freedom of speech? So that we have the right to cause an insurrection if we want. Do you want these corporations telling you you can't do that? The right to secession, the right to abolish forms of government is fundamental. And you want the tech giants, because of private property, allegedly, you're okay with that. You were upset with me for calling it out because it was Trump and you don't like Trump. That is some weak sauce. You need to defend the undefendable. You need to defend the unlikable. Because it's easy to defend those whose speech you like. They probably will never need defending. Again, to use a biblical analogy, Jesus had said to his followers, if you only love those who love you, of what credit is it to you? Even the tax collectors do the same. The tax collectors kind of that were the kind of embodiment of evil. It was, if you wanted to insult somebody, you called them a tax collector, which kind of that speaks to my libertarian heart. But so yeah, he goes, what credit is it to you? So I say to you, what credit is it to you if you defend lovely speech? Even the tax collectors do the same. It's of no credit to you, and it's of no credit to liberty. Okay, I'm just getting this dry. So where'd my little fan go? It's funny, for such limited space here, I tend to lose so many things. Well, I can't find it. It's here somewhere. Where did I drop that fan? Well, anyway, let's just do this. Though this isn't quite as effective. Oh, here we go. I found it. Let me just stick this on here a little bit. Hopefully that sound is not too distracting to you. So here's, I believe that was the last clip. So here's where we're going to talk about the problems and the solutions. When you have a company that will then go and destroy the competition so that the entire libertarian argument of go elsewhere fails because they're ruthlessly hunting you down and keeping you from going elsewhere, where's the libertarian solution in that? Do they actually have a right to do that? I'm hard-pressed to find a strictly libertarian answer that says they don't. If you have a strictly libertarian answer to say how it is aggression for Amazon to collude with Twitter and then cut out Parler's legs from under them so that all of these untouchables, it basically is a political case system that we're setting up here, so that these untouchables have nowhere to go, I would love to hear that libertarian argument. But I can't think of one. If we're just going to deal in libertarian purity, then what? Just tough? That doesn't seem right, though. Something seems wrong there. So either there's a libertarian answer for it that I haven't come up with, or this is an area where maybe we have to depart from purity. So let's explore that a little bit, because I don't have a libertarian answer to offer you. So let's explore as to whether departing from libertarian purity would actually be such a crime against Rothbard. And it goes back to what I said in the beginning. We do not live in a state of nature. We have a very marred canvas. So we can't act as if pure libertarian solutions are going to be the answer, because we don't have a pure canvas. The government is already involved. And for us to simply throw up our hands and say, well, private actors can do anything they want in these circumstances, I think is to be unjust. And it is to allow people to be victimized. And I love libertarian philosophy for its own sake, but I also love it because it brings justice. And when those two things come into conflict, loving it for its own sake, but having it used for injustice, I can't stomach that. Because if this isn't ultimately about people, what's the point? So, yeah, I'd love to hear a libertarian answer. Otherwise, this is where I'm going. These actors are not strictly private actors. They've already gotten into bed with the state. When you get into bed with the state, then you then live by state solutions. So perhaps in this circumstance, because of their own free choices, they didn't have to get into bed with the state. That was their choice, that we leave it and be fine with the consequence of their choice, which is the antitrust litigation. For the same reason I was fine with the Libertarian Party suing the Commission on Presidential Debates under antitrust litigation, which is something we don't generally support. But it seems to me that might be the option here. And I don't think it's necessarily a betrayal of libertarian principles, because these companies voluntarily got into bed with the state and now are using that power to oppress. They are not innocents in this. They are not sheerly private actors. Then there's the other issue that I haven't really gotten into, but as far as for me, if you don't agree, this will not be an option for you. But I don't consider corporations to be sheerly private actors with private property. They're creatures of the state, and creatures of the state can die by the state. Okay, letting this dry. I see there's a comment that I do want to address. I want to let this dry a tiny bit, so I will. I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I will put you up on the screen and interact because I appreciate it. Just want to make sure I'm at a point I can do that. Man, this magnetic liner is just so smudgy. Like, it goes everywhere, and once it's on, it does not want to come off. These are these little Almay sticks. If you haven't seen them, they're super cool. So they're these little Q-tips. You break off the top, and then makeup remover like travels down into the bottom. It's pretty cool. They're like preloaded with makeup remover. Awesome invention. Thank you, capitalism. Okay, so let's go to the screen here. Get my glasses. I don't know if you were here earlier, Mallory. It says we still have other options. Wasn't the only other option. Perhaps. Are they equivalent options? I view that when we're dealing with people who got into bed with the state with the same jaundiced eye that I did the state of Colorado when they said to me, when I complained that they were limiting my political free speech by not letting me have show my ballot when they said you can exercise your political speech a different way. If they didn't suppress Parler and it just happened to be that the other options weren't so great, I'd say too bad, so sad. But they are actively going after the places that people, actively assassinating, not through the market, but through underhanded tactics. And I don't believe we should allow our principles to be cover for underhanded tactics. That's just not right. And there is definitely something stinky going on here. I wanted to put that back up. It went off the screen too much. Telegram or Signal is not the same type of platform. It's not a public like social media. I have those. They're not the same thing. And what those lead to actually can be quite dangerous. It leads to cells. It leads to very radical extremist cells. But here you go. If you're an entrepreneur, invest in another. Really? Entrepreneurs were investing in Parler. How did that work out for them? You can't just simply do that when these companies are colluding to assassinate their competition, not outcompete them. Our philosophy deals with competition, not market assassination. Parler, let me get this up here. Parler was a crackpot app, so that's what people wanted to go to. I'm sure they taken your opinion into consideration. I'm saying that sarcastically. It's the app they wanted to go to. Whether we like it, you like it, I like it or not is completely irrelevant to the question. They are their own worst enemy with their security leak that they had. But we don't get to judge what other people would want to go to. Where they wanted to go, at least at that time, was Parler. And they were market assassinated through underhanded means. And completely in violation of the contract that Parler had with Amazon. We are dealing with contracts here. And I just cannot believe that in the battle between, a superhero, supervillain type thing. I'm giving an analogy. Nobody's a hero, a pure hero here. But we're arguing for the villains. We're arguing for the clear villains. There's no clear heroes, but there are clear villains. And it's like I said about Rothbard when he advocated that parents don't have the obligation to feed their children. I said, if that's what libertarian philosophy leads to, fuck it. Too bad for libertarian philosophy if it's going to lead you to say, well, there's evil, to sanction evil. And I don't believe that our philosophy requires us to sanction evil or to give cover to bad actors. Now, what we can do about the bad actors, I don't know. I'm still open to that. Even if it's just criticism, I don't know. But people were criticizing me for criticizing. But I can tell you this libertarian, because they are creatures of the state that got into bed with the state, became co-tyrants with the state, I have no problem with the Sherman Antitrust Act being used against them. Just desserts. Okay, there's the white lashes. Not sure if I like it. I think they needed to be trimmed down a little. It's an interesting look. Let's put on the other one and see how that goes. It's funny, though, the outrage that I'm feeling with it, I do see a direct parallel to the Commission on Presidential Debates as to what they're doing to us. And we see the injustice there. But we don't see the injustice when it's people we don't care for. And that is an inconsistency I cannot bear. Because really, the analogy is pretty spot on. Because you want to know what happens if an alternative organization came up? The Commission on Presidential Debates threatens and says, and forces the candidates that debate on their stage to agree not to debate anywhere else. The analogies are really, really tight. I'm not good at putting my fake lashes on my left eye because, you know, your dominant hand. Let's get that on there. These are magnetic lashes, for those of you who are wondering. There we go. Well, that's an interesting look. What do you think? It's not meant to be like a beauty look. It's meant to be like an editorial look. You know, it's meant to be, you know, weird. See if we can get that to settle down a little there. Going to press it down. Okay, now it's on evenly. Now some lipstick, and let's see if there's more comments here. Yeah, and I'm not sure, Mallory, thank you for conceding some good points. I don't really know what the answers are. I'm grappling. I'm really, really grappling as to what we should do here. But I know the answers I've seen over social media, the very simplistic libertarian bot, you know, walking, talking libertarian bot answers are not the answers. And they will not serve us well. And that we have to grapple with these points. Now, let me give some hope at the end of the tunnel in another way. I'll line my lips first. At least the bottom lip, and then we'll do the other one. I'm going to put on, I think, a nice red lip. But it looks like Parler may have found another hosting company. If that goes well, and they aren't also assassinated, then this was a minor blip. A minor blip, and then the market prevailed. But I'm not so confident that the market will. And I'm very, very alarmed at the collusion going on in unrelated areas. The fact that their lawyers dropped them. I mean, that is crazy. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. It may turn out that the market will provide. And one thing I do think that we need to be cognizant of, let me line the top, is we can't expect market correction to occur overnight necessarily. So, no, libertarianism doesn't have a fatal flaw if it takes a year, say, for a competitor to be able to overcome. So I think there's some time here that we need to watch and wait, but I want us to watch and wait with soberness, with open eyes, and not, you know, be blind to what's really going on. And perhaps this, which is, I think, one of the biggest tests of this type of censorship and market intimidation, perhaps we shall see how the market does overcome. But the fact is, do we even really have a market today, though? In Libertopia, I think this would not be a problem, which is why I don't consider it a fatal flaw. In Libertopia, there would be enough people with enough resources that were free that would provide. But we don't live in Libertopia. We live in an extremely hobbled market. And I'm not so sure this hobbled market that is under the tyranny of the state and other market actors that have become co-tyrants with the state can overcome it. In Libertopia, no problem. So I guess all the more argument to proceed towards Libertopia. But what I'm urging libertarians is we can state our pure philosophy and stick by it while recognizing that pure applications in an impure world sometimes will victimize people. And if we're not ultimately about people, let me give a different example here with some more likable characters. It's going to be a hypothetical, but you'll get my point. Okay, need to blot that a little bit and put some powder on it. Let's say, and people often give this type of example. Let's say there was a gas station, or I'm trying to come up with something that's more of is a necessity, like the public square is. Let's say there was a food providers or gas station in rural America. Doesn't even need to be America. This could be a fictitious country. And they decided they don't like gay people, and they're not going to sell to gay people. Our pure philosophy would say that's their right. They're pieces of shit, but that's their right. Because you'd say they could always just go buy from someplace else. But we're dealing with a small town where how much of the population is gay? What's it, 10%? 10% of a market, unless they could persuade the non-gay people to be outraged, and I would hope that they could, so that there's another option. But let's say then this food provider came from a very powerful family, and when other grocery stores tried to open up, they market assassinated them. Would we then just say to these gay people, well, too bad for you, you need to starve? We wouldn't. We would recognize that something is going on here. Something's going on wrong here when the market is being manipulated through intimidation. Of course, you could also just say, well, they should just move. Really? But that, okay, perhaps. But that's kind of harsh, right? That's why it doesn't walk on all floors, because you can't move to a different internet. Unless you wanted to speak about the dark web. But we could even say there's some reason why they couldn't move. You know, we're dealing in hypothetical. And I think we would realize the unjustness there when the minute we put in sympathetic victims rather than unsympathetic victims, such as alt-right or Trump or whatever. There is never the perfect victim. And if you wait for the perfect victim, you will never call out bad actors, because there are no perfect victims. What do you think the right's doing? Like, I'm going to be doing a show taking down this guy who just absolutely incensed me with the way he was trying to dismantle the Breonna Taylor incident to try to make it not as outrageous, because he found flaws in Ms. Taylor. Because she wasn't the perfect victim. There's never the perfect victim. And I was absolutely outraged by that, and I'll be taking the piss out of that argument for sure. But all I'm asking here is that we realize that pure principle does not work in an impure society all the time. We even recognize this in the platform, don't we? We believe, don't we? And I'll give you 2 examples. We believe that marriage, the government should be out of marriage. But right now the government is in marriage. So what does our platform say? And I authored this part of the platform, by the way. I'm the one who wrote the proposal, and then the delegates passed it. That said, while we ultimately believe that the government should stay out of marriage, purity, as long as the government is involved in marriage, it needs to treat everybody equally. That's justice. That's still recognizing our principles and recognizing justice, which is what we need to find a way to do here. And another point that was brought home to me by somebody I disagree with a lot now, our former chair, but he had a great point here. We believe that the state there should be a separation of education and state. Would that have put us standing with the racists who are trying to keep the black school children out of schools because we don't believe there should be government schools to begin with? I sure hope not. You know, we don't believe the government should be providing roads. Would we be okay with excluding, you know, certain classes of people from the roads because we don't think they should be there to begin with, and excluding one set is one step along the way to excluding everybody? There comes a point where principle, humanity, and common sense and the recognition that we're in an impure world need to come together. And I'm as deontological as they get, and I'm saying it, that we need to find a way and grapple with this. So that's pretty much all I have, as I am repeating myself. So I really appreciate the interaction, Mallory, and I hope this discussion continues into the future, and we shall see what the market shall do. So have a good night, everyone, and I will be doing some Libertarian Party history later tonight. That's why I am getting ready. I didn't put this on just to, you know, scare Wayne. I'll be doing another show later. Love you all. Thank you.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.